Jake Thompson adjusted his tie for the third time, his hands trembling slightly as he stood at the altar, surrounded by friends and family. The church was adorned with flowers, their sweet fragrance mingling with the soft notes of a string quartet playing in the background. The sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the polished floor, but Jake barely noticed. His heart raced with anticipation and anxiety, each beat echoing in his ears. Today was supposed to be the culmination of his dreams. He was marrying Emily Carter, a woman whose beauty seemed almost ethereal. As the doors at the back of the church swung open, Jake's breath caught in his throat. There she was. Emily walked down the aisle, radiant in her flowing white gown that hugged her figure perfectly, accentuating her every curve. Her long, dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves, and her eyes sparkled like diamonds. Jake was entranced, his worries dissipating in an instant as he focused solely on her. The whispers of their guests faded into the background, and all he could hear was the soft sound of her footsteps approaching. "Isn't she stunning?" a voice beside him murmured. It was his best man, Mark, who wore a proud smile. "Stunning doesn't even begin to cover it," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He felt an overwhelming surge of love and admiration as she drew closer, her smile radiant and infectious. As Emily reached the altar, she took Jake's hands in hers. The warmth of her touch sent a jolt of electricity through him. "You look incredible," she said, her voice soft and melodic, with a hint of excitement. "And you look like a dream," he responded, unable to keep the awe from his voice. The officiant began the ceremony, but Jake's mind was only half listening, lost in the depths of Emily's gaze. They exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through thick and thin, and as Jake slipped the ring onto her finger, he felt like the luckiest man alive. After the ceremony concluded, laughter and joy filled the air as they made their way down the aisle, hand in hand, greeted by cheers and applause. The couple was enveloped in a sea of well-wishers, friends, and family members eager to congratulate them. "Congratulations, you two," Mark shouted, raising a glass of champagne in celebration. "Here's to a lifetime of happiness." "Thank you," Emily replied, her eyes shimmering with joy. "We're so excited for what's to come. Just remember, if you ever need a babysitter, I'm your guy," Mark joked, and laughter erupted around them. The reception hall was a lavish affair, bedecked with elegant decorations and twinkling fairy lights that created a magical atmosphere. As Jake and Emily entered, the room erupted in applause once more. The couple shared their first dance, an intimate moment amid the festivities, swaying gently to the music as they lost themselves in each other. Jake wrapped his arms around Emily, feeling the warmth of her body against his. "I can't believe we're finally married," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Neither can I," she replied, her gaze never leaving his. "It feels like a fairy tale." They spun around the dance floor, the world around them fading away as they reveled in the moment. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced around and noticed a few guests casting envious glances in their direction, whispers passing between them. Although it should have filled him with pride, he felt a slight unease creeping in, as if something was off. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked, her brow furrowing slightly as she sensed his distraction. "Yeah, I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. "I guess I'm just nervous about the future." Emily smiled reassuringly. "There's nothing to worry about. We're in this together, remember?" "Of course," Jake agreed, forcing a smile as they continued to dance. The music swelled around them, and he tried to focus on her, letting the rhythm guide them as they lost themselves in the moment. But the strange feeling lingered at the back of his mind, nagging like an itch he couldn't quite scratch. As the night progressed, the couple mingled with their guests, the laughter and toasts echoing throughout the hall. Jake felt a sense of pride as he introduced Emily to his friends and family, watching her charm everyone with her warmth and grace. She was everything he had ever wanted, and he couldn't imagine a life without her. Later, as the evening drew to a close, Jake and Emily found themselves alone for a brief moment, stealing away to a quiet corner of the hall. "Can you believe it?" he asked, his heart swelling with happiness. "We're married. It's incredible," Emily said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I've dreamed of this day for so long." Jake leaned in, brushing his lips against hers, tasting the sweetness of the moment. "I promise to always cherish you," he murmured. "You mean the world to me." "And you mean everything to me," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But as she spoke, Jake noticed a fleeting shadow cross her face, a flicker of something that didn't seem to match the joy surrounding them. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked, pulling back slightly to search her eyes. "Nothing really," she said, forcing a smile. I can't believe how perfect this all is. I just want to soak it in." "Me too," Jake replied, though a hint of concern lingered in his heart. He wanted to believe her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling him. As the night wore on, they retreated to their luxurious honeymoon suite, a place that promised romance and adventure. The space was adorned with soft lighting, rose petals scattered across the bed, and a bottle of champagne chilling on the side table. "Welcome to our love nest," Jake said playfully, trying to lighten the mood as he poured them both a glass of champagne. Emily laughed, the sound brightening the room. "I love it. This is perfect." They clinked their glasses together, savoring the moment, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was lingering beneath the surface. As they settled onto the bed, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I love you, Emily," he said, his voice earnest. "I love you too, Jake," she replied, her eyes shining with sincerity. But just as she spoke, a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossed her face again, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Are you sure everything's okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "I promise it is," she insisted. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden behind her beautiful facade. As they settled into each other's arms, he resolved to uncover the truth, whatever it may be, knowing that their love would be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Jake Thompson settled back into his routine after the honeymoon, the fleeting euphoria of their romantic getaway slowly giving way to the mundanity of everyday life. The grandiosity of their wedding and the idyllic locations they visited had felt like a dream. But now, as he pulled on his tailored suit for work, he couldn't shake a sense of unease creeping into the corners of his mind. It was subtle at first, like a whisper, but it grew louder with each passing day. Emily, his stunning bride, had taken to spending long hours at home, often retreating to her study, which she had claimed as her own space. Jake noticed how she seemed to be increasingly absorbed in her work, a vague sense of purpose driving her behind those closed doors. He would catch snippets of her conversations during late-night phone calls, her voice low and hurried, but when he would ask her about them, she would dismiss them with a wave of her hand. "It's just work, Jake," she would say, her eyes darting away as if avoiding his gaze. "You know how demanding my clients can be." Jake wanted to trust her, he really did, but that nagging voice in his head couldn't be silenced. It was a feeling he couldn't ignore, a gut instinct warning him that something was off. He tried to shake it off, convincing himself that he was being paranoid, but the feeling hung around like a persistent shadow. One evening, Jake was tidying up after dinner, the smell of rosemary and garlic still lingering in the air. He reached for a dish towel and caught sight of Emily's desk, cluttered with papers and books, an uncharacteristic mess for someone as meticulous as her. Curiosity piqued, he approached her drawer, which was slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of something tucked away inside. He hesitated for a moment, glancing toward the hallway to ensure Emily was still in the living room, absorbed in her work. His heart began to race as he pulled the drawer open wider, revealing an envelope neatly sealed. The stark white stood out against the dark wood of the drawer, and without thinking, he slid it out, his fingers trembling slightly. Carefully, he opened the envelope. Inside, he found a series of photographs. His brow furrowed as he examined them, each image sending a shockwave of confusion through him. The man in the photographs was someone he had never seen before, an unfamiliar face with a charming smile, his eyes bright yet somehow haunting. The pictures showed the man in various settings. At a cafe, at a park, even standing in front of a luxurious car. What the hell? Jake muttered under his breath, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. He flipped through the pictures, each one more unsettling than the last. The man looked almost too perfect, and yet there was something disconcerting about the way he seemed to loom in the background of Emily's life. As he stared at the photographs, a chill ran down his spine. He heard Emily's footsteps approaching, and panic surged through him. Quickly, he shoved the envelope back into the drawer and closed it, disguising his growing turmoil behind a mask of normalcy. "Hey, what's up?" Emily asked, a bright smile on her face as she entered the kitchen, her hair cascading over her shoulders like a golden waterfall. She looked radiant, completely unaware of the storm brewing within Jake. "Just cleaning up," he replied, forcing a casual tone into his voice. "How was your day?" "Busy as usual," she said, her smile fading slightly. "I had a couple of clients who needed some last-minute adjustments." She moved to the sink, rinsing her hands absent-mindedly. "But I'm glad to be home now." Jake watched her closely, trying to decipher the hidden meanings behind her words. "You seem a little distracted lately. Everything okay?" Emily turned to face him, her expression shifting as if she were carefully selecting her words. "Of course, I'm just, you know how it is. Sometimes work piles up." She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "Let's focus on relaxing tonight. How about we watch a movie?" "Sure," Jake replied, though his mind was elsewhere. The photographs weighed heavily on him, and he felt a growing urgency to confront Emily about what he had discovered. But the timing didn't feel right. He needed to gather his thoughts first to understand what he was dealing with. Later that night, as they curled up on the couch, Jake stole glances at Emily, trying to read her. She laughed at the movie, her laughter bright and melodic, but he couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled over him like a heavy blanket. The images of that man flashed in his mind, and he felt a sense of betrayal that he couldn't articulate. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety. Jake tried to act as if everything was normal, but the unease gnawed at him. Each time Emily received a call, his heart would race, and each time she brushed off his questions, it felt like another layer of trust was being chipped away. He decided it was time to confront her. One evening, after dinner, Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation that felt inevitable. He found Emily in the living room, flipping through a magazine, a serene expression on her face. "Emily," he began, his voice steady. "We need to talk." Her eyes flicked up to meet his, momentarily surprised. "About what?" "About you. About the calls you've been getting and this." He hesitated, then decided to plunge in. "I found some photographs in your drawer. Who is the man in them?" The smile faded from Emily's face, replaced by a look of apprehension. "Jake, just tell me the truth," he interrupted, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "I need to know. Is he someone from your past? Why are you hiding this from me?" "It's not what you think," she replied, her voice calm but her eyes betraying her. "He's just an old acquaintance. We used to know each other years ago." "An acquaintance? Emily, these photographs, why would you hide them? Why are you being so secretive?" Jake felt his heart racing, the betrayal slicing deeper. "I didn't want to bring up old memories," she replied defensively, crossing her arms. "I thought I could just leave that part of my life behind." "And what part of your life is that?" Jake pressed, his voice rising slightly. "What else are you hiding?" Emily looked at him, her expression shifting from guilt to anger. "Why are you accusing me of something? This is ridiculous." Jake ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of the situation. "I'm not accusing you. I'm just trying to understand. I love you, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this story." She sighed, her frustration palpable. "I don't know what you want me to say. It was a different time, Jake. I was young, living a life I'm not proud of. But it's over now. I chose you. Yet I feel like I'm still living in the shadows of your past," Jake said, his voice softening. "Please, just be honest with me. I can take it." Emily's gaze dropped to the floor, and for a moment, silence enveloped the room. The tension hung thick in the air, and Jake could feel the distance growing between them. Finally, she looked up, her blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll tell you everything, but you have to promise me you'll listen." Jake Thompson's heart raced as he sat in the dimly lit cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around him, mingling with the tension in the air. He glanced nervously at the door, waiting for Mark, his friend and now reluctant accomplice in uncovering the truth about his wife, Emily. It had been days since he found the photographs hidden in her drawer, and the nagging feeling of betrayal had transformed into a full-fledged obsession. He needed answers, and Mark, a private investigator known for his resourcefulness, was his only hope. The bell above the door jingled, and Mark stepped inside, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the floor. He spotted Jake and made his way over, a mix of concern and curiosity etched on his face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, sliding into the seat across from Jake. "I might as well have," Jake replied, running a hand through his hair. "I can't shake this feeling that Emily is hiding something huge. She's been so secretive, and I need to know what's going on." Mark leaned in, his expression serious. "You're sure you want to do this? Sometimes, the truth can be more dangerous than the lies." Jake nodded resolutely. "I have to. I can't live in the dark anymore. If there's something about her past that could affect us, I need to know. I love her, but I can't trust her if she's keeping secrets." "All right," Mark said, pulling out a notebook. "Let's start with what you know. Tell me everything." Jake took a deep breath, recounting the recent events. He described the late-night phone calls, Emily's evasive responses, and the discovery of the photographs that featured a man he'd never seen before. "I confronted her about it, but she brushed it off. I can't shake the feeling that it's more than just an old acquaintance." Mark scribbled notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'll dig into her past, see what I can find." Sometimes, a little digging can reveal more than just dirt. As they discussed the plan, Jake felt a mix of hope and dread. He was stepping into uncharted territory, and he couldn't predict what they would uncover. But the desire for truth outweighed his fear. Later that evening, Jake returned home, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. Emily was in the living room, flipping through a magazine, her beauty still captivating even in her casual wear. But tonight, there was an underlying tension in the air that he couldn't ignore. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, glancing up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Busy," he replied, forcing a smile in return. "Just work stuff. You?" "Same here," she said, her voice light but her gaze flickering toward the window. Jake hesitated, the urge to confront her gnawing at him. "Emily, can we talk about something?" She looked at him, surprise mingled with apprehension in her expression. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "It's about those late-night calls," he started, choosing his words carefully. "I found those photographs, and I can't help but feel there's something you're not telling me." Her expression hardened, and for a moment, the warmth in her eyes vanished. "Jake, I told you those were from an old friend. There's nothing to worry about. But why do you keep dismissing my concerns?" he pressed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I want to trust you, but this feels like a wall between us." Emily stood up, her posture tense. "You're not trusting me. You're spying on me, and that's not love, Jake." "I'm trying to understand," he replied, rising to his feet as well. "If you'd just let me in, we wouldn't be having this conversation." She turned away, her jaw set in determination. "I can't talk about this right now." Jake watched her retreat, feeling the distance between them grow. The confrontation left a bitter taste in his mouth. He loved her, but the secrets were suffocating him. That night, sleep eluded him as questions spiraled in his mind. The next day, Mark called with a breakthrough. "Jake, you need to meet me. I found something about Emily's past." Jake's heart raced as he arrived at the small office where Mark worked, a sense of foreboding settling in his stomach. Mark was waiting for him, his expression grave. I dug into some records and found out Emily was married before. What? Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. I had no idea. Why didn't she tell me? Mark continued. Her first husband disappeared under suspicious circumstances. There are rumors surrounding it, and it's not pretty. Jake felt his world tilt on its axis. Disappeared? What do you mean? There are no records of him after a certain point. It's like he vanished. People in her town remember a lot of strange things surrounding their marriage too, Mark said, flipping through the papers in front of him. It's like she wiped her past clean. Jake's mind raced. What else? What did they say? Mark leaned in, his voice low. Some people claimed that Emily was involved in some questionable activities. They said her first husband was looking into her past before he disappeared. Questionable activities? Jake echoed, the words echoing in his mind like a death knell. What kind of activities? Mark shrugged. I couldn't find specifics, but it's enough to suggest that her life before you was far more complicated than she's letting on. Jake felt sick. The woman he had married, the one he loved, was shrouded in shadows he hadn't even known existed. I need to confront her again, he said, determination setting in. I can't let this go. That evening, Jake returned home, his heart heavy with the weight of his discoveries. Emily was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, her movements graceful yet mechanical. He watched her for a moment, conflicted emotions swirling within him. She looked up and smiled, but he could see the flicker of apprehension in her gaze. Jake, dinner will be ready soon, she called out, attempting to lighten the mood. Emily, he began, his voice steady but firm. We need to talk. I found out about your past, about your first husband. Her expression shifted instantly, the color draining from her face. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I spoke with Mark, he said, crossing his arms. He found records of your marriage and your husband's disappearance. Why didn't you tell me? Jake, please, she pleaded, stepping closer, her hands trembling. You don't understand. No, I don't, because you won't let me in. I thought we were building a life together, but now I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. He shot back, frustration boiling over. Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. It's not that simple. I didn't want to bring that part of my life into our marriage. I thought I could leave it behind. But you didn't. It's still a part of you and it's affecting us, he yelled, his voice echoing in the small kitchen. I need the truth, Emily. All of it. She stepped back, her expression shifting to one of anger. So this is how you show your love? By accusing me and prying into my past? No, I'm trying to protect our future, he exclaimed, feeling the weight of her accusations. You're the one who's pushing me away. The tension hung thick in the air, a chasm forming between them. As Jake looked into her eyes, he saw not just fear but a flicker of something else, defensiveness, a wall built to shield her from the pain of her past. Jake, I can't talk about this right now, she said, her voice trembling as she turned away. Emily, he started, but she interrupted him. Just leave me alone, she shouted, her frustration spilling over. Jake felt a sharp pain in his chest. This wasn't the woman he had married. This was a stranger, someone hiding behind a facade. He stepped back, his heart heavy with confusion and betrayal. As he stared at her, he realized that love was supposed to be built on trust, vulnerability, and honesty. But with each revelation, he felt that foundation crumbling beneath him. Torn between love and betrayal, Jake's heart sank deeper into despair. Jake Thompson paced nervously in the dimly lit shadows of the alley, the cool night air wrapping around him like a shroud. He had followed Emily, his heart racing with a mix of dread and determination. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Her late-night calls, her increasing secrecy, and now the photographs he had stumbled upon. The image of the strange man haunted him. What was happening in his wife's life that she had kept so deeply hidden? As he peered around the corner, his breath caught in his throat. There, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, was Emily. She stood facing a tall man, his posture rigid and imposing. Jake squinted, trying to make out the urgency in their body language. Emily's hands were raised, her face a mask of anxiety. The man's gestures were aggressive, his voice low but clearly laced with menace. "Emily, you need to listen to me," the man said, his tone threatening. "You can't just disappear. They'll find you, and when they do, it won't be pretty." Jake's heart sank. Emily was in trouble. He felt a primal urge to rush in, to protect her, but he hesitated, rooted to the spot by a mix of fear and uncertainty. What if he made the situation worse? What if this man was dangerous? "Please, just leave me alone," Emily pleaded, her voice trembling. "I've moved on. You can't keep coming back into my life like this." Jake's mind raced. Who was this man? Why was he threatening Emily? He strained to hear more, desperate for answers. "Moved on?" The man laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You think you can escape? You're a part of this whether you like it or not. You can't run from your past." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. Emily had a past, a dangerous one. He had felt it in the air between them, like a storm brewing. But now, his worst fears were coming to life. The man stepped closer to Emily, and Jake instinctively took a step forward, his fists clenched. He couldn't let her face this alone. "Stay away from her," Jake shouted, stepping into the light. The confrontation felt surreal, as if he were watching it unfold from outside his own body. Emily's eyes widened in shock as she turned to see Jake. "Jake, no!" she cried, her voice laced with desperation. The man's gaze flicked to Jake, a sardonic smile curling his lips. "And who might you be?" "Her knight in shining armor." "I'm her husband," Jake replied, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "And I won't let you threaten her." The man's eyes narrowed. "You really think you can protect her? You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Then tell me," Jake shot back. "Who are you? What do you want from her?" "Enough," Emily interjected, stepping between the two men. "Jake, please, just let me handle this." Jake's protective instincts flared. He could see the fear etched on her face, and it ignited a fierce determination within him. "No, Emily, you're not handling this alone anymore. Whatever this is, we'll face it together." The man laughed again, a cold, empty sound. "Together? How sweet. But you're just a distraction, Thompson. She's tied to a history that's much darker than you can imagine." Emily's expression shifted, a mix of fear and anger. "Leave him out of this," she yelled, her voice breaking. "You're not going to hurt him, not while I'm here." The man stepped back slightly, assessing the situation. "You really don't understand what's at stake, do you? This isn't just about you anymore. It's about all of us, including your father." Jake felt the world tilt on its axis. "Her father?" he echoed, confusion washing over him. "What do you mean?" "Jake, stop!" Emily cried, but it was too late. The man had dropped a bombshell, and Jake's mind raced to process it. Why was her father involved? What had Emily done that required such a dangerous confrontation? The man leaned closer to Emily, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They're looking for you. They need you to fulfill your end of the deal. And if you don't, well, let's just say the consequences won't be pretty for anyone involved." Jake's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He reached for Emily's arm, grounding her, trying to convey a sense of safety. "Emily, tell me what's going on. We can figure this out together." She looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. I can't put you in danger. You don't understand what they're capable of." "Then help me understand," Jake urged, desperation creeping into his voice. "I can't just stand here and watch you suffer alone." The man chuckled darkly. "You think you can protect her? You're just a pawn in this game, Thompson. You have no idea who you're up against." "Enough!" Emily shouted, her voice echoing in the alley. "I've had enough of this. You don't own me anymore. I'm not going back." The man's expression turned menacing. "You think you can run forever? I'll be waiting. You'll never escape your past." With that, He turned on his heel and strode away into the shadows, leaving Jake and Emily standing together, their breathing heavy, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. "Emily," Jake began, his voice trembling slightly. "What just happened? Who was that man?" She sank to the ground, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she sobbed. "I thought I could protect you, keep you safe from my past. But now it's all coming back." Jake knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her, pulling her close. "You're not alone in this. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Just tell me what's going on. I need to know." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with anguish. "He's connected to my family, to a past I thought I had escaped. My father has enemies, dangerous people, and I thought I could start fresh, that I could leave it all behind. But it seems they've found me." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The whispers of danger loomed over them, dark and relentless. "What do they want from you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "They want me to come back, to fulfill obligations I never agreed to. They think I owe them something, that I can somehow fix the mess my father created." She paused, her voice shaking. "But I can't go back to that life. I won't. Then we'll find a way to protect you," Jake vowed, determination flooding his veins. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Just then, Emily's phone buzzed violently on the ground, shattering the tension. She glanced at the screen, her face paling. "No, it's him again. I can't answer." "Who is it?" Jake asked, concern knitting his brow. "It's the man from before. He's been calling me for days, threatening me, warning me. I can't stay here. I need to leave town immediately." Panic surged in her voice, and Jake felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. "Leave?" he echoed, disbelief creeping into his tone. "What do you mean? We can't just run away. We need to figure this out." "Jake, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "It's not safe for you. If they find out you're involved, they'll come after you too. I can't let that happen." The gravity of her words settled heavily in the air between them. Jake's heart raced, fear clashing with his desire to protect her. "Emily, I love you. I can't just let you walk away." "I love you too," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But you have to understand, this is bigger than us. I need to do this to keep you safe." His chest tightened at the thought of losing her, but he also understood the urgency in her voice. "But what if I can help? What if we can find a way to confront this together?" Emily shook her head, a defeated look clouding her features. "I wish it were that simple, but I can't risk your safety. I have to go." As she began to pack hastily, Jake felt a sense of helplessness wash over him. He wanted to fight for her, to convince her to stay, but he also knew that pushing her might drive her further away. The weight of uncertainty loomed over them like a dark cloud, threatening to tear apart the fragile threads of their love. "Emily, please," he said, his voice low and desperate. "Just think about it. Don't make any rash decisions." But she simply shook her head, not meeting his gaze. "I have to do this. I can't put you at risk." With trembling hands, she stuffed clothes into a bag, and Jake's heart shattered at the sight of her packing to leave. Time felt like it was slipping through his fingers, and he fought to find the right words to keep her there. "Emily," he said, forcing her to look at him. "You're my wife. We took vows together. I promised to stand by you in sickness and in health." Endangered Jake stood in the living room, the air heavy with tension as he watched Emily hurriedly stuff clothes into a suitcase. The soft sound of fabric against fabric seemed to echo the turmoil in his heart. He felt utterly helpless, a spectator in the unfolding drama that had turned their lives upside down. Each movement she made sent a pang of desperation through him, and he could barely comprehend the reality of the situation. "Emily, please," Jake said, his voice trembling slightly. "Can't we just talk about this? You don't have to leave. We can figure it out together." His eyes pleaded with her, hoping to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. Emily paused, her hands frozen midair, caught in a moment of indecision. Her striking blue eyes, usually so full of warmth, flickered with uncertainty. "Jake, you don't understand," she replied, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I can't put you in danger. Not anymore. I love you too much to let that happen. But running away won't solve anything," Jake exclaimed, frustration mingling with fear. "You're just leaving me in the dark. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be protecting you from." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for a heartbeat, Jake thought he saw a glimmer of the Emily he had married. The one who laughed easily, who danced in the kitchen while preparing dinner, the one who had filled his life with light. But that was gone, overshadowed by secrets and shadows. "I wish I could explain everything," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I really do, but there are things from my past that are too dangerous to bring into our lives. If I stay, I put you at risk. I can't do that." Jake shook his head, feeling the weight of her words settle over him like a shroud. "You think running away will protect me? It only pulls us further apart. You're not just leaving town, you're leaving me behind. And I can't just let you go." Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I have to do this, Jake. For both of us. Please try to understand." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" The words slipped from his mouth before he could think. "How can I trust you when you won't even tell me the truth? I feel like I don't know you at all anymore." Her expression hardened, and Jake could see the resolve in her stance. "I'm doing this to protect you. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." With that, she zipped the suitcase, and the sound felt like a finality that struck Jake like a physical blow. He stepped forward, desperate. "Emily, don't go. I love you. You're my wife. We took vows, remember?" At his words, she faltered, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment. "I love you too, Jake. More than you know." But the moment passed, the walls she had built around herself rising once more. "But love doesn't erase danger. It doesn't change what's coming for me." Jake reached out, grasping her hand in a last attempt to connect. "If you leave now, you're choosing to face this alone. I can't just stand by and watch you walk away." Emily hesitated, her brow furrowed in conflict. "What do you want me to say? That I'll stay and put you in harm's way? I can't do that." "I won't," he sighed, feeling defeated. "Then let me help you. Let me be a part of this. Whatever it is, we can face it together. Please, don't shut me out." The tension in the room crackled like electricity, and Jake watched as Emily bit her lip, her emotions warring within her. "Jake, I don't know if you can handle the truth. I don't know if I can handle the truth." Silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, Emily blinked away tears, her resolve seemingly wavering. "I'll keep you updated. Promise. But I have to go." As she turned to grab her suitcase, Jake's heart raced. "When will you be back?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know." Emily paused, looking back at him. "But I promise, I'll find a way to make this right." And with that, she walked out the door, leaving Jake alone in the dimly lit apartment, the silence now deafening. He stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, his heart pounding in his chest. Once the door clicked shut, Jake felt a wave of despair wash over him. Alone, he sank onto the couch, his mind racing. What had just happened? He felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath him, and the air around him felt stifling. He grabbed his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed Mark's number. "Come on, pick up," he muttered to himself, his anxiety bubbling over. "Hey Jake, what's up?" Mark's cheerful voice broke through the fog of despair. "Mark, I need your help," Jake said, his voice strained. "Emily's in trouble. She just left, and I don't even know where she's going." "What? Slow down, man. What's going on?" Mark asked, concern lacing his tone. "She's hiding something. I don't know what, but it's serious. I need to find her. Can you help me track her down?" "Of course. You know I'm on your side. Let me grab my things and I'll be over in a bit." "Thanks, man," Jake replied, relief flooding through him. He needed Mark's expertise. Together, they could piece together the puzzle that Emily had left behind. As he waited for Mark, Jake paced the living room, his mind racing with thoughts of Emily. Every moment they had shared flooded back. The laughter, the intimacy, the dreams they had built together. But those memories were now marred by uncertainty and fear. When Mark arrived, he wasted no time. "Okay, let's get to work. What do we know?" Jake took a deep breath, trying to collect his thoughts. She mentioned a threat from her past. There was a man she met, someone who seemed dangerous. And then there's that envelope with the photographs. I don't know who he is, but Emily is terrified of him. Mark nodded, pulling out his notebook. "All right, we'll start by tracking down that man. We need to find out who he is and what his connection is to Emily." As they began to piece together the clues, Jake felt a surge of determination. He couldn't just sit back and let Emily face this alone. He would uncover the truth, no matter how deep he had to dig. The stakes were too high, and he was done feeling helpless. "Let's find her," Jake said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. "I won't let her down again." Jake Thompson felt the weight of urgency pressing on his chest as he raced through the dimly lit streets. The revelation he'd uncovered about Emily's past, a twisted family feud that connected him to the very man threatening her, spurred him on. The night air was brisk, sending shivers down his spine, but the thought of Emily being in danger ignited a fire within him. He had to find her before it was too late. His mind raced with questions as he recalled the details Mark had shared with him. The man now stalking Emily was not just a stranger. He was a part of a dark legacy that Jake's father had tried to bury long ago. They had been enemies, caught in a web of betrayal and violence that Jake had never known existed. But now he was faced with the reality that Emily was deeply intertwined in this history, a history that threatened to swallow them both whole. As he turned a corner, Jake's heart sank at the sight before him. Emily stood at the edge of a parking lot, her silhouette briefly illuminated by a nearby streetlight. She was speaking to a tall, rugged man whom Jake recognized instantly from the photographs he had unearthed. The man's features were fierce, and his posture radiated intimidation. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he moved stealthily closer, his heart pounding in his ears. "Emily, you don't understand," the man said, his voice low but urgent. "You need to come with me. It's not safe here." Jake's stomach churned. He could see the fear in Emily's eyes, and it struck him like a punch to the gut. He stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Emily!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the tension in the air. Startled, Emily turned toward him, her face a mix of relief and fear. "Jake, no, stay back," she cried, instinctively stepping away from the man. But Jake was already there, the confrontation unavoidable. He squared his shoulders and glared at the man, who was now eyeing him with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "Who the hell are you?" Jake demanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. The man's expression hardened. "I'm her brother, Jake, and I'm here to protect her from our father's past." The revelation hit Jake like a tidal wave. Brother? This man was Emily's brother? All the pieces began to fall into place, but confusion still clouded his mind. Protect her? From what? He asked, struggling to make sense of it all. "From the legacy of violence that our family is known for," he replied. "You don't understand what she's been through. Our father is dangerous, and he's looking for her." Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I faked my marriage to escape that life, Jake. I thought I could start fresh, but he found me. I never wanted you to be involved in this." Jake's heart raced as he processed her words. "You faked your marriage? Why didn't you tell me?" The hurt in his voice was palpable, mingled with the desperation to protect her. "I was terrified, Jake. I thought if I stayed away from my family, I could build a new life," she explained, her eyes pleading. "But now it's too late. He's here, and I don't know what he'll do if he finds out I'm still alive." Jake's protective instincts surged. "We'll face him together. I won't let him hurt you," he vowed, stepping closer to Emily and her brother. "You're safe with me." "Jake, you don't know what you're dealing with," her brother interjected, his voice laced with urgency. "This isn't just about family drama. Our father is ruthless. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. But I can't just stand by and let you both face this alone, Jake insisted, his voice rising. You're my wife, Emily. I love you, and I will do whatever it takes to protect you. Emily looked into his eyes, her expression softening. I need you to trust me, Jake. I'm not the person you think I am. I've lived in fear for so long, and I thought I could escape. But now, I realize I can't do this without you. Just then, a distant sound of a car engine echoed through the parking lot, growing louder. Emily's brother's eyes widened in alarm. We need to go. Now, he urged, urgency clear in his tone. Without hesitation, Jake took Emily's hand in his. Come on, we'll figure this out together. He could feel the fear radiating from her, and it fueled his determination. They rushed toward the exit of the lot, adrenaline pushing them forward. As they reached the car, Emily's brother glanced back nervously. If we don't act fast, we might not get another chance. Our father's men are always watching. What do we do? Jake asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Emily's brother took a deep breath, his expression grave. We need to lay low for a while, regroup, and come up with a plan. I have a place we can go, somewhere our father won't find us. Lead the way, Jake replied, squeezing Emily's hand reassuringly. He could feel her trembling but steadied her with his grip. We'll face this head-on, together. As they drove into the night, the weight of their new reality settled heavily upon them. Jake glanced at Emily, her face a mixture of fear and determination. You're safe with me, Emily. I promise, he whispered, his heart swelling with the truth of his words. Emily nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, Jake, and I'm so grateful for you. I didn't want to drag you into this, but I see now that we're stronger together. Their bond, forged in the fires of adversity, felt unbreakable in that moment. The road ahead was uncertain, but Jake knew one thing for sure. He would fight for her, for their love, no matter the cost. As they drove toward the unknown, a sense of hope flickered within them. They had uncovered the truth, faced the shadows of the past, and dared to believe in a future together. With every mile they put between themselves and the danger lurking behind, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were more than just a couple. They were allies in a battle that would test their love and their resolve. And as the night deepened around them, Jake knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, united against the darkness.